Marty, what are you doing?
I want to feel what it's like to be an astronaut, so I'm doing puffy head bird legs.
Puffy head bird legs? Anna, you're an astronaut. Is this a thing?
Yes, actually, Beth, it really is. When you're out on the pad getting ready to launch with your legs in that position, the blood that pools in your legs goes up into your central venous system and then makes your head look puffy. When you see astronauts on orbit due to the fluid shifts, you'll see that their faces are puffy. Gets rid of all those wrinkles, which is nice, and then also your legs get skinnier.
Huh.
See, puffy head bird legs.
You still look goofy.
Looks like you guys are going to need a little bit more time to talk about this.
We've got some time.
This is
STEM in 30.
Hi, I'm Marty.
And I'm Beth, and we are coming to you live from the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., from the Moving Beyond Earth Gallery.
Today we are joined by NASA astronaut and medical doctor Michael Barrett. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
My pleasure. It looks like some real interesting kids here today.
We have over 100 kids in the audience today ready to ask you some great questions.
We also want to remind those of you who are watching online, you can submit questions. We may take some of them on the air. If not, we do have an expert standing by to answer them for you.
Speaking of questions, we are going to start with a game that we call Lightning Round, where we're going to ask you a whole bunch of questions.
Okay, so Michael, we're going to have some of our friends come up here. They're going to ask you a question. You only have 60 seconds to answer as many as you can, and I get to ring my bell.
Pressure's on.
All right, come on up, guys. Let's have the clock, please. All right, are you ready? Come on up. Let's go.
What are your degrees in?
I'm sorry.
What are your degrees in?
My degrees are in zoology, medicine, and aerospace physiology.
What was more fun, launching on the space shuttle or Soyuz?
Launching on Soyuz.
What was your favorite landing, the space shuttle or the Soyuz?
Definitely the shuttle.
What is your favorite thing to do in space?
Looking at the Earth from space.
What is your least favorite job as an astronaut?
Fixing the toilet.
Favorite thing to look at on Earth?
Glaciers.
Longest you ran on the treadmill in space?
45 minutes on the treadmill for me.
What's your favorite part of training?
I think hanging out with my crewmates.
What's your favorite book?
I think the Voyage of the Endeavour, biography of Cook.
Pen or pencil?
iPad.
What was the thing you were looking for the most forward to when you got back to Earth?
Seeing my family again.
A role model or a hero?
I think Captain James Cook.
If you had a chance, would you go back into space?
Like that.
Would you take a trip to Mars?
Yep, like that.
Were you scared during launch?
If you're not a little bit scared during lunch, you don't know where you are.
And that's it. That's all the time we've got. Outstanding job. Beth, how many did he get to?
Got 16, and since you're our first astronaut, this is the bar everyone else has to beat.
All right.
Now, we talked a little bit about puffy head bird legs at the beginning of the show. Did you experience that at all?
Well, sure, everybody experiences a little bit of it, both lying on the pad when all that fluid shifts from your legs to your chest, and when you get into zero gravity, that shift happens in earnest and doesn't reverse. And so everybody gets a little bit of a head fullness, and the legs start to get skinny because you lose the fluid and you start to lose muscle mass.
Well, we got a chance to talk to another astronaut and medical doctor, Kjell Lindgren, about this fluid shift. Check it out.
One of the significant things that we experience when we get into space or weightlessness is this thing called the fluid shift. And that's because on Earth, our cardiovascular systems have to work against gravity. As you stand up, all of the blood wants to flow down into your legs and lower body. And so we have a number of physiologic systems that counteract that, that push the blood back up into the chest and especially up to the head to make sure that the brain continues to get blood. All of those systems continue to work in space, but in the absence of gravity, pulling blood down into the legs, it results, when you get into weightlessness, of a shift of all of the blood and fluid that's in your legs, or most of it, up into your chest and head. So that results in everybody getting, we call facial edema, or their faces get kind of puffy. You have a sense of congestion. All of the tissues inside your nose and sinuses become engorged, and so you feel kind of like you have a head cold. You get a sense of head fullness, and some people might even develop a headache. And then if you were to look at our legs, we kind of describe them as bird legs because they look really skinny. Even if you worked out a lot and your legs are muscular, everybody's legs look very skinny and thin. So that is the fluid shift that occurs in space, and it lasts until you get back down to the ground and have gravity pulling that fluid back down into your legs. It has some important physiologic implications, one of which is that we think that fluid shift causes an increase in pressure around the brain, and that pressure can be transmitted along the optic nerve into the eye and increase the pressure in the eye and actually change the shape of the eye such that it makes the eye flatter. And I found that I actually had to wear reading glasses in space where I don't on the ground. For some astronauts, it's actually resulted in permanent changes to the eye. And so we have a whole research program right now with a lot of diagnostic tools on the space station to track and investigate these changes and to figure out what else is going on to cause these vision changes. I was very grateful when I returned back to the Earth and the fluids redistributed, that my eyesight went back to normal. But this is an important problem for us to figure out for future astronauts.
Michael, did that fluid shift ever affect your taste buds?
It's interesting. For some people, it really does affect their taste buds, a little bit of congestion in the upper airways and the nose. But for me, it didn't. And I just really like to eat up there. And so for me, food wasn't a problem.
All right, well, our friends at the Johnson Space Center Food Lab sent us some samples of actual food, just like what would go up to the International Space Station. And we've got Kai and Amaya here, and they're going to help us try some of these things out. But Michael, how do you drink this?
Well, that's a great question. And one of the things about being in space is that there is no gravity, so you can't pour open liquids. If I were to take this bottle and pour it, nothing would happen. It would stay in the bottle, and I could shake it out, but then it would go everywhere. We just have water bubbles going through the cabin. So everything has to be closed up in a bag like this. And so if you've ever seen a drink bag in a store or had these, this is exactly how we drink in space. Now, we have a special machine up there that we can put these on, and it will tell you how much water is going in. You can tell it what temperature. And I will take the place of that machine today with just a syringe. Thank you, Marty. And basically, I'm going to do what the machine does for us and squirt water in. Now, normally, these bags are very flat because there's nothing in them but a little bit of powder flavoring. And that flavoring could be anything from soup, tea, coffee. And in this case, what do we got there, Kai? Or Amaya, rather?
Lemonade.
Lemonade, right. So we are going to go ahead and finish filling this to about as much water as we would have in there. And you can see it kind of puff out like that, right? And then I'm going to take this away and I'm going to put a straw in there. But this is more than just a straw. It has a little valve in it. And you want to be ready with that. And you want to be sure the valve is closed. Because if it's not closed, and we always look for this click to see if you can hear that. All right? That's how you know it's closed. If it's not closed and you let go of it and you squeeze it, you will have lemonade in your hair or up your nose or in your friend's hair because it all goes into the cabin like a little bubble. So we are going to give this to Amaya and Kai, and I'm going to let you open the valve very carefully and keep it upright. You don't have to worry about that, zero gravity, but here we do.
We do the same thing.
And see what it tastes like. By the way, we normally have to squish this around a little bit. So hopefully that's squished enough to mix it.
Okay, so go ahead and
lift
open
that little tab up. There you go. That's it. And just use it like you would normally use a straw.
There you go.
Did you get it?
What'd you think?
It tastes like it's not sweet. It's like a bitter taste.
It's
Okay.
yeah.
What did you
It
think?
tastes as if you were actually going to drink orange Gatorade.
Okay, so it tastes a lot like that. Was it good?
Yes.
Did you like it?
No.
So you gotta like lemonade for sure. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is close those valves because if we lay that on its side, it will do what it does in space.
Now, Michael, on these, I noticed that these are the actual thing because they have Velcro on the back of them. Why is
Absolutely.
that?
So the reason we put Velcro on these is so that we can put them down someplace and it won't float away. And this is the sticky part of the Velcro, the hook, and we have pile Velcro everywhere, and I've only got a little bit here. But if I had that little patch on my flight suit, that's pretty heavy. But I could put that there and I don't have to worry about it. And if I want to drink, I go poof, right there and I drink. If I just put it down, it'll float away. And sometimes at the end of the day, you go through the cabin and then you find the floated away drink bags and you have to collect those for you. So that's a pretty handy thing to have on there. Everything's got a little Velcro dot on it.
You guys ready for our main course?
Yes.
All right, we've got some mac and cheese that we're going to try.
Yes, indeed. And basically, you would get a packet that looks something like this, but this is dehydrated. It's very dry. And if you looked at the packet, you would see, what does it say on there? Macaroni and cheese, right. But it also is in an inside packet, so why don't you pull that out, because that helps it last longer in space. Now, it's starting to look a little bit more familiar, but not quite so familiar. So we have actually gone ahead and squirted the water in this, hot water, and it says two other things on there. What does that say?
100 ml hot water.
And what
10 to
else?
15 minutes.
Exactly. So it tells you that you need to put in about 100 mils of hot water and then squish it. Play squish, squish, and then let it sit about 10 to 15 minutes, and then it rehydrates, and then it becomes macaroni and cheese. So this is dehydrated food, and you'll notice what these little blue dots are. What are those? Velcro, absolutely. So you can stick it somewhere. Especially you would put these full of water and rehydrate them, and you'd stick them on you, and you knew exactly where they were, and 20 minutes later you're ready to eat. Now, one thing we don't want is mac and cheese in the cabin. So this is definitely, it's made specially to kind of stick together so that when we open the pack, it doesn't fly everywhere. And we're going to cut it very carefully right in the middle. So I'm going to lift up a little bit there, cut it, boom. And then I'm going to cut kind of an X pattern. That way and that way.
Scissors seem to be an important utensil on the space station.
Everybody has their own personal pair of scissors, and it's tied on a string with a little bit of Velcro, and we kind of keep it in our pocket, and we pull it out anytime because we're always opening stuff. And the reason is everything has to be packaged so it doesn't float away. All right.
Reach in and grab some, guys.
Use a spoon, please. All right. So take a little bite and tell us what you think.
Oh,
you
take
can be a little more
more than
adventurous.
that.
Be a space explorer. There you go. Yes, please. All right, Kai. What does it taste like, Kai?
It tastes exactly like Earth macaroni and cheese.
Exactly like Earth macaroni and cheese, except it's space macaroni and cheese, so it's really expensive.
It tastes like powder. Powder.
Okay, so food critic Amaya here, but she's absolutely right. One of the things about it, food is huge in space. I mean, it's not just for nourishment. It's psychologically, it's a big boost. So how food tastes is really important to us. I just want to make sure that this is exactly as I remember it. Now, for me, I would put a little bit of hot sauce on there because I kind of like hot sauce on things. So that is one of your main courses. We have steak, we have shrimp cocktail, we have vegetables, we have soups. We got all sorts of other things. Okay. Now, I don't know how appetizing that looks, but this is dessert. And Amaya, why don't you tell us what we got there?
Now feel it.
Yeah, feel it. It's apricot cobbler. Yeah, use
What's
both.
it feel like, Amaya?
It feels slimy.
Go ahead and
Kai,
feel
what
it,
do you
Kai.
think?
What do you think?
Take a feel.
Feels hard and slimy.
Hard and slimy. Well, so it's not going to look like any apricot cobbler you would have on the ground because, again, we have to package it in a way that it won't escape and that it will last for sometimes years in storage. So when we want to have dessert, we pull this out, and there's no instructions. We can just eat it like it is. And what we like to do is take it by one edge and go like this. There's no gravity, but this will force it all down to the bottom so that when I cut here, I'm not going to have cobbler in my face immediately. And again, you take your scissors, which are on a string for you. You cut. It's very important that you don't cut all the way. The reason is you'd have two pieces of trash instead of one. So that's important for us to kind of keep those together. And then you go to the bottom and you roll it up and you get it right towards the top. And it's really sticky, and we want it that way because we don't want it to float in the cabin. It holds itself together. All right, here we go, Maya. Be bold. Space Explorer. There we go. And remember, this is dessert. What do you think, Kai? You got that bite in there first.
What do you think?
It tastes like apricot with some extra stuff in it.
That's basically apricot cobbler.
It tastes really sour.
It is a little sour.
Yep.
It's good, though.
Yep. I'll tell you, this with a cup of tea at night. So when we get done, and actually a lot of you probably grew up with your mothers telling you to clean up your plate. You really want to do that in space. You want to eat everything. Because when you throw it in the trash, it's going to stink the more you leave. And so trash management is huge. So we open things and we finish them. It's really, really important for us.
Guys, great job. Are you ready to go into space?
Yep. No.
All right, well, nice job.
Although you could help us make the food better.
That's a very important job.
Right, and I'll tell you, the people who prepare this are food critics like Amaya, and they really help us.
Awesome. Well, nice job, guys. You can head off stage. Michael, are you ready to take some questions?
Absolutely.
All right, let's start with an online question. All right, we're going to go to an audience question.
All right. What country are you in when you're in the ISS, and what time zone do you use?
Excellent question. You are on international territory, so we're not in any particular country, but because we have so many international partners and mission control centers, we decided to split the difference, and we're on Greenwich Mean Time. That's from England, basically, and you have to speak English and Russian to work on the space station. So we're like our own little country.
All right, let's go to another audience question.
Does the lack of gravity pull you apart, and do you get taller?
No, yes. So the lack of gravity does not pull you apart so much, but it changes your whole body shape in many ways. One of those ways is to make you taller, because normally right now gravity is compressing my spine this way. But take away the gravity, the spine gets a little longer, and the curve that's normally in everybody's back straightens out. So adults will grow an inch, inch and a half, sometimes 2 inches.
All right, let's go to an online question. Does the food go stale in space?
That's a really good question, and we worry about that a lot, which is why we use food like this. It's packaged and it's sterile and it can last for really years. And the same with the dehydrated food. Once we take all the water out of it, vacuum pack it, it's good for years. But as soon as you put water in it, or as soon as you open a pack, then it potentially could get stale or start to rot on you. So we're very careful about how we manage the food.
Was there anything that you really missed when you were up in space?
I think fresh fruit and vegetables are probably the main thing, because everything we have, for the most part, has to be preserved. So crunching a nice cold apple was one of the first things I wanted when I got back.
Nice. All right, so we got a chance to talk to Kjell Lindgren about kind of a mysterious disease that they're still studying in space, space motion sickness. Check this out.
So about 70% of first-time flyers will experience what's called space motion sickness, or spaced adaptation syndrome. And it's has some similarities to motion sickness back here on Earth. And we think that motion sickness occurs because of a difference between what our eyes are seeing and what our inner ear, our vestibular system, is sensing. And that disconnect tells the brain that something weird is going on and gives you that sense of nausea or motion sickness. So when I got into space, initially I actually felt great. I was hungry, and my Russian colleagues were like, "Oh, you're doing great, no problem." I was eating, and then after about 4 hours of being up there, I took a nap, and when I woke up, I was feeling pretty crummy. And for the next 48 hours, for the next 2 days, I didn't feel very well. I felt nauseated. But after that, after kind of this adaptation period, I felt great, and I was excited to get to work.
Now, Michael, one of the important things is to keep yourself healthy, is you have to exercise. And how's your running going here?
I'm getting tired.
You're getting tired, okay. Yeah, can you run like this on the International Space Station?
Well, so when we run, we have to run on a treadmill because we don't have a big open expanse to run on. And it kind of looks like this with one exception, and that if you remember in space, is there any gravity? No, so you just float away. If you tried to push your foot against the surface, you'd float away. So what we have to do is tie ourselves down, and we have these elastic cords that would anchor to the bottom there on either side of the treadmill, and then they attach to our waist right here. So when we run, we look kind of like that, except we have a bit of a bounce. So we go like this, and we bounce against these things. And we can turn the gravity up or down depending on how tight these things are. And so it's a different kind of running, but it actually feels very, very good to run. And it helps keeps our legs strong, and it helps us remember how to walk and run on gravity.
So let's see what you can stop.
Well
now.
done.
Thank you. What are you doing?
Biking.
Biking to where?
I don't know.
Is this how you cycle in space?
It is exactly how we cycle. We have 2 bicycles, and both of them have little seats. So it's not like you're upright on a normal bicycle. It's like a seated bicycle, except there's no gravity holding you down to that seat. You just kind of hold on with your hands. And bicycling feels really good, and we need that to keep our heart and lungs strong up there so that we're fit to come down. And if you're really good at biking, you can do it for 90 minutes at a time. It takes us 90 minutes to make one orbit around the world. So if you cycle for 90 minutes, then you could say, I biked around the world, which is kind of cool. But we do this really hard, so we get our heart rate up high, we get our air moving really good, we sweat a lot, but it just feels really good exercise.
So what's more fun, biking on the Earth or biking around it?
Oh, biking around it is pretty cool, but I do like biking on Earth as well.
Okay, we've got one last station. Are you working up a sweat yet?
Not really.
We need bigger weights.
But it is different than doing it normally.
Yeah. And so what I've asked him to do is a little bit different. I've given him some weights, and he's a big, strong guy, so he can do this easy. And our upper body is important to keep strong, especially to be ready for spacewalking. But where we lose bone and muscle is mostly in our legs. And so what I've asked him to do is add deep knee bends to that to give some really big loads to those muscles. And when you think about it, we don't have any gravity up there, right? And when he's doing his knee bends, he's lifting his body weight, right? What is your body weight in space? Less than it is. Absolutely nothing. Nothing weighs anything. So it wouldn't help him much to exercise just by doing this, although it's helping him now. But we have to put that back. We have to put that force back. And we have a special machine called a resistive exercise machine. I think you've done enough. You've done extremely well. But don't go anywhere. We have a special machine that will lay a bar across your shoulders. And the same type of thing. It gives you a lot of force. And when you come up, you're resisting that force. And it gives you a big load, up to 600 pounds, in fact, to lift instead of having your body weight to lift there.
So you don't have barbells? We
do not have barbells. They would mean nothing. Same with these little dumbbells. They would mean nothing. But you have to have a machine that gives you that resistance. And so we spend an hour and a half every day doing heavy resistive exercise. And we spend another hour each day either running on a treadmill or bicycling. So 2.5 hours a day of exercise.
Yeah, keeping fit is important, especially when you come back to Earth. And we talked a little bit to Chell Ingrid about that.
The absence of gravity is somewhat overwhelming, so the ability to float is absolutely incredible, but it means that it's a pretty big change when you come back to Earth and experience gravity again. My mind immediately adjusted to gravity. We all grew up in this gravity environment, so I very quickly, it felt normal to be in gravity, but the effect of gravity, the heaviness that I felt, how everything felt so heavy when I picked it up, that took a lot of getting used to. And so really over the course of 2 weeks, my vestibular system adjusted so that I didn't feel quite as dizzy. And then after about a month, my body really kind of got back to normal, and all of the aches and pains associated with living and working in gravity again disappeared.
Ready for a few more questions?
Absolutely.
All right, let's start with an online question. How long do astronauts sleep each night on the ISS?
That's a good question. We actually get at least 8.5 hours of scheduled sleep time, but we find that most astronauts sleep a lot less than that. For me, 6 hours was perfect. For some, it's a little less even, but most 7.
Okay. All right, we've got an audience question.
How do you stay in contact with your family?
We have, believe it or not, a telephone up there that we use. It's an internet telephone that goes to a satellite, but I could call my family every day, and that's really cool. Psychologically, it's really cool. And I could ask my kids if they got their homework done and stuff like that.
One of our curators got a phone call from one of the astronauts on the ISS, and I was very disappointed because it sounded like he was in the next room. It didn't sound like he was 250 miles out.
Our engineers are pretty good.
All right, let's go to an online question. Do you have a first aid kit in space?
We actually have a little medical kit up there, which is actually quite big, much bigger than a first aid kit, and somewhere between a first aid kit and what an ambulance would carry. So we're ready for a lot of different types of medical emergencies that could happen in space.
Okay. Go to an audience question.
Which do you like more, exercising with gravity or without?
I would have to say without, because if I'm exercising without, then I'm in space, and I really love being in space. Good question.
All right, let's go to an online question. Do astronauts on the ISS eat meals together at the same time each day?
Good question. And every crew is a little bit different. There's 6 of us up there normally, and everyone is on their own timeline for working, but the meal schedule is more or less synchronized. My crew, in fact, there's my crew. we ate lunch and dinner together every day. For us, it was really, really important. And as a crew of 6 people, we got along extremely well. We loved hanging out. And then a lot of times we would go back to work after dinner, but it was that important for us to all work or to eat together.
How important was that to work well together, and how did you guys deal with conflicts?
It was extremely important. Because of that, we were able to know, like I knew what was going on in the Russian segment, my Russian colleagues knew what was going on in ours, we knew what was coming in their timelines, what was breaking, what was working, how we could help each other, but we told jokes, we sang songs, we solved the world's problems. One person was responsible for bringing music every night, and so we had country western, we had heavy metal, we had the Brandenburg concertos, and everything in between, hip hop, rap, you name it.
Awesome. All right, we've got an audience question.
Can you describe how urine is recycled on the space station?
Okay, so I'll make it very simple. You pee into a hose, and the hose is attached to a machine. You turn on the machine, and about a week and a half later, you get fresh water out. Now, we recycle about 85% of our urine and sweat, which is pretty good because it means you don't have to launch a bunch of this. What is water? It's heavy. Every time you launch a pound of water, that's a pound of something else you didn't launch. But if you can take 85% of that pound that you peed out and drink it again, it's great. Now, I simplified it, but we have a very good set of machinery up there which distills it. The water we get out of there is much purer than you would get out of your tap. So it's nice to know where your next drink is coming from.
It's probably a good thing we didn't tell Kai and Amaya about that before we started.
Especially Amaya. Yep.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been great.
My pleasure.
We'd like everybody to tune in next month as we will be coming to you live from the NASCAR Hall of Fame in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Check this out. I'm at the Richmond International Raceway, and these cars were racing around this track at upwards to 175 miles per hour. Now, sometimes there are accidents, but for the most part, the drivers walk away. Ever wonder what keeps them safe? If you have, be sure to check out the next 730.
Be sure to stick around for a few minutes after the credits. We're going to ask Michael a few more questions. And as we leave you today, we're going to leave you with the sights and sounds of the launch of STS-133, a flight that Michael was on, the last flight of the Space Shuttle Discovery. We would also like today to dedicate this broadcast to astronaut Piers Sellers, who recently lost his battle with cancer. Thanks for watching.
Two, one. Booster ignition and the final liftoff of Discovery. A tribute to the dedication, hard work, and pride of America's space shuttle team. The shuttle has cleared